Hello, this is Anna Amelia from North East Animal Rights doing another one of our Saturday Spotlight interviews. And again, today we have Tim Barford, who is the director of Yaoh Ltd and also the co-founder of VegFest UK. Now, we're taking the unusual step of interviewing Tim again because we aired the first part of an interview a couple of weeks ago. But towards the end, I alluded to a question which we were going to explore, and we've chatted off air, and it's quite a big subject. So rather than go into loads of detail about this particular subject, which we can say now obviously is happily resolved, we wanted to talk about two specific aspects of it. You know, specifically the words we use for diets, which profess to help animals, and conflict resolution within the animal rights organisations. So both within those, I mean, we're going to try and cover those in sort of like 20-30 minutes, and I know they're massive subjects, but we're going to try our best anyway, so please bear with us. So viewers may have heard of terms like flexitarianism, reductionism, and within conversations about veganism. You'll see on the adverts in Veganuary, there was a company doing do what you canuary. So it's all kind of like play on words about reducing the animals you're killing for food. Now, as an abolitionist group, North East Animal Rights, we don't support anything other than veganism. So total, nothing to do with reductionism, flexitarianism. But I know obviously that these are, these are out there in the community, and people are hearing them on social media and in the news and on TV. So would you mind telling us about these different terms for our viewers and listeners, but also your thoughts on them as well?
Yeah, thanks, Anna, and welcome everyone. And we're going to be nice and speedy and quite an uplifting conversation, which is going to be quite tricky because there's some quite serious issues here. But a lot of us are familiar with this, and that's a good introduction. We're really talking about, abolition of the use of animals, and then a kind of reductionist approach, which is, more focused on diet, reducing the amount of animals that are used by humans. So I think the first thing I'd say, Anna, is I would recognise, having had a number of years of experience of this, that nearly always, with one or two notable exceptions, but never mind, nearly always everyone's intent is really good. And I think we forget this sometimes with conflict and debate. People actually have different positions. The intent is really good. And our intents are shaped by different things in our lives. And some people may prefer one approach to prioritise, and other people may. And that's just partly, and these may change. They're flukes. But if we come to veganism, we should remember that, first of all, plant-based diets have originated all over the world for millennia, roots all over the world. So these cultures are important to recognise that, veganism has its roots in all over the world with plant-based diets, but also importantly with the vegan philosophy, which is also to be seen in different cultures from different over millennia in different parts of the world. But this crystallization of the vegan social movement, which began in 1944, of course, in the UK, is a key issue too, as in any social justice movement. So these ideas are really important that came from the 40s. So I was lucky enough to know Arthur Ling briefly before he died 15 years ago. He was one of the pioneers. People who knew Kathleen Chanaway, still alive today, and know these ideas that were handed down 50 years ago, 70 years ago, so this progression. So it's important, I think, to recognise that the vegan movement as a social movement is now 70-something, 8 years old. We've got a tradition now. So when you join a movement, you're not just making it up as you go along. You're kind of joining something that's been fairly well established. Of course, in 1979, the key definition of veganism by the Vegan Society that we as a movement adhere to, and you, as you've expressed, it's the abolition of the use of animals, ending the use of animals. Veganism is a philosophy, it's a position, and I think veganism is best described as a position against the commodification of animals, that upholds the rights of animals not to be used as property, and that from that, a set of lifestyle choices that reflects that position. So that's what veganism is. And it is centered about, not using animals. It's a justice movement for animals. It's the only one there is. And it's important. And it's very clear, we're aiming to end the use of animals. That's it. All animals are included wherever practicable and possible. But there's a definition. It's there for us. All of us coming into the moon, we've got it. It's all there, and it all stands up. And what we have to remember is that when we're advocating for the benefits of plant-based diets, of which there are multiple benefits, of course, whole food plant-based diets, great for health, great for the environment and sustainable food production. These are sort of human-centered benefits, all of which are really, really important in their own right. Absolutely crucial. We know this. But they are separate and different from the vegan position. These are lifestyle choices, and this is a vegan position. And the vegan position then produces the lifestyle choices, but it's the position that's the key. And so when we're advocating for the end of the use of animals, which, you and I do, and lots of us do, we should be clear that that's what we're advocating for, ending the use of all animals. However, we should also recognize that people don't always respond like that. Some people go, "Do you know what? Yeah, you're right, I never thought of that. I totally agree. Wow, how do I go vegan then? I understand why. Where do I start? Yeah, thanks very much." Other people will be, "Well, yeah, okay, some of this and some of that, and not quite sure, but it kind of makes sense." But there'll be other people who just ultimately reject it. Go, "You know what? Your veganism? No, absolutely not. Either laugh at it or mock it or fail to understand it or reject it." So we have to be prepared as advocates to deal with that. So of course, then, a plan B, perhaps if somebody rejects veganism, encouraging to use more plant-based products is of course a good thing. But you're right, we shouldn't be advocating for baby steps. We should be encouraging people to stop using animals and be clear. However, we should also distinguish between the individual approach, which we do, but then there's the institutional approach. So if we're, say, doing what just been announced this morning in New York schools with the new vegan mayor of New York, they've now got one day, I think Friday is plant-based day. So all the schools in New York are like plant-based day on a Friday. I mean, this is a huge step. We can all see that, but it's a reductionist strategy. And it's one that we can all see is really necessary. We've got institutions making big changes. But when we apply that to an individual, it's like, stop anything. I'm going to eat plants one day a week. I mean, it's like, okay, that's sort of good start. But really, we're talking, there's no reason why you shouldn't be eating plants every day of the week. And understanding the principle, animals aren't ours. Can we leave them alone? Be fair to them. Not asked to use. We don't have to love them. We just have to be fair to them. Practice non-violence. Let them be. That's it. That's all it is, really. So they're very important with this, to understand these things and not conflate them. Have some clarity, try and be supportive. If people want to advocate for plant-based diets because they feel comfortable, what we may loosely call the cupcake vegan, this is a fabulous way, and many of us do this. I myself have helped pioneer that approach. About that, but I practiced it for my first 20, 30 years of being vegan, very much. Cupcake vegan, that's where all the events came from. It's just like, hey, come and have a bit of vegan food, no matter about all the issues. We're not asking you to change particularly, we're just asking you to come on, get okay with the plant-based option. What Donald Watson referred to as ripening people to the idea of veganism. So there you go. And I think when we look at the animal groups and the charities, it is true that back in the 90s in the USA, the ethical vegan position kind of got sort of took over by corporate takeover of big charities, big bucks. And the kind of sell was, let's reduce our animal intake, but not really make any changes. Whereas, as you know, the abolitionist position is we're actually changing the way we view animals from property status to personhood. So it's a very different thing. The vegan movement is not a plant-based movement. The vegan movement is about changing the way we work and engage and shift and live with and cohabit with animals. And the plant-based movement is very much about engaging with people to use more plant-based options. So there's a lot in common, so there's a lot apart. And the animal groups are responsible for being clear about where they are with that and what the priorities are, how we're best to get to a vegan world. The first thing is, let's be clear about what veganism is and not conflate it with the plant-based diet. And I think once you see all of this stuff is a lot more sensible. Then it all makes sense. It's when you're thinking veganism is somehow about plant-based diets, you don't understand. Or when you think the plant-based diets is what about veganism, they're similar, they've got a lot in common, but they're separate. One is a position, really one is a diet. And that's okay, that's fine, but let's be clear. So I think that, Anna, is in a nutshell about what happened in the UK maybe 7-8 years ago, with the growth of suddenly a lot of people are suddenly going vegan, and that's when it became an issue in the UK. That's when there was quite a lot of conflict.
Yeah.
And it was a challenge. But out of that came what I think you and I would agree on and reflect, and a lot of us agree, is what we might call a soft rights approach, or a happy abolitionist approach, where we kind of, we have the principles, but we also perhaps engage with people in different ways that requires perhaps a broader understanding of people and how change happens. So without abandoning our principles, we can gently encourage people and meet them where they are and help them educate themselves without perhaps, scaring them away, or excluding them, or punishing them, or taking a puritanical approach. What we have to do is, of course, seek learning outcomes, deal with sensitive issues in a supportive fashion, but with clarity and honesty, and hopefully some kindness too.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot, obviously there's an awful lot, and that's sort of what you've just said there, but some of the things I was kind of, it was kind of like sort of registering with me, where it is about the intent. The plant-based diet is literally, it's the diet. The veganism is a whole lifestyle. It's your choice, it's your ethics, it's how you live your life. I know that Jody Casamajana, who I interviewed a while ago, he's created this brilliant book called The Ethical Vegan. And the reality is, we shouldn't have to have the word ethical in front of it, because veganism is actually a set of ethics. But unfortunately, because of the dilution, with people throwing this word plant-based around and saying they're vegan and saying I'm vegan, but are walking around wearing leather and still going to circuses and zoos and things like that, people are not really understanding veganism properly. So I think our group, although our group is an abolitionist group, completely abolitionist, and we will not move from that, I think a big part of what we have to do is educate people. And it's about meeting, like you said, meeting people where they actually are at the moment, because I wasn't born vegan. I was vegetarian from the age of 14 for a good, nearly sort of like 38 years or so. So it's kind of, if somebody came along to me and said, you are doing something wrong, you have to be vegan tomorrow, I would have just kind of thought, I can't do that. It's too extreme. You've totally put me off. So you have to talk to people about, like you said, meeting where they are. And Joey Carbstrong said that as well. When you're talking to people, you don't know whether they're at the start of the journey, at the middle of the journey where they're gathering information, or at the very end, and what you say is the thing which tips them into veganism. So you have to be aware, and also kind to people as well, because people could present themselves at our stall in different situations. They'll come along and some will be quite aggressive, quite angry. Why are you doing this? This is just rubbish. Some of them will be quite curious. Some of them won't have a clue what you're talking about, so it's kind of different approaches. And I know we've had, last time we were out, we had a big inflatable cow, and underneath we had "Don't steal our milk" written in chalk, and we had somebody come along quite aggressively telling us that we were talking rubbish, that's calcium you get from cow's milk, and blah blah blah. So we listened to her. She was never going to change her opinion. We tried to give her some scientific facts, but she was never going to change. But then we also had a dairy farmer. Yeah, but we had a dairy farmer come along, and she said, she was asking about the cow, because basically she was interested in getting one for like a marketing tool. And I had said, and she said, I'm a dairy farmer, you won't like me. And I said, well, you know, we're not enemies. We need to just talk about these things. You have been brought up in one lifestyle. I'm now living another lifestyle. It's about talking, because I'm very aware that a lot of our strongest advocates are people like Doug Moore, who, you know, who was a slaughterhouse worker, and we have Jackie Norman and Rebecca Knowles. They were dairy farm workers. So I think people who've been there and done it, it's really, really important that they have been there and done it, and then because they can speak their truth very, very strongly and compassionately. And
as it grows, you will see, of course, more people. But I think it's important, Anna, to be clear here. There's no such thing as this perfect vegan.
Yeah.
You know, this idea somehow put about that there's a perfect vegan. We'd be better off having more imperfect vegans than a handful of perfect vegans. This is just a basic misunderstanding of the principles. And this is where it's important. If we're going to, you know, solve conflict and avoid conflict, this is why people have to be clear about what we're talking about. The perfect vegan idea is a misunderstanding of the principles of veganism that already include, where practicable and possible. We already acknowledge that veganism, those principles, will look different to different people in different circumstances. Of course, you only have to think what the principles of veganism will look like if you're on a different part of the world without basics, access to food, water, housing, clothing, medicine, and such like. So we're already there with that. So this kind of idea of, oh, you know, the perfect vegan, it doesn't exist. It's a misunderstanding. What we're actually saying is, yes, there's a lot of pretty much plant-based and plant-based curious who are driving the growth of vegan products. Well, of course we can see that. But that's different from the vegan movement. The so-called perfect vegans are the only people who can grow the movement, because the vegans are the ones who understand the position and how to explain it to other people. So this whole kind of, and we're still seeing it today, like we're still seeing headlines from some of the main groups going on about, oh, discussing why, you know, we're better off having more imperfect vegans than perfect vegans. It's just a misunderstanding of the terms. And it is got to a point where actually, people, if you're a responsible media outlet, you shouldn't be conflating these. Not now. That's what happened 7-8 years ago. And look at the conflict. Talking with Channa, I'd like to move on too.
Of course, sure,
resolution, because that's important. Too long. So, really, what I'm referring to here, and this is what we're not referring to in detail, is that we know that 7 or 8 years ago there was a lot of conflict in our UK animal rights movement and globally, but especially UK, because of these very issues. There was a reductionist approach and an ethical vegan approach that kind of clashed, kind of sorted it all out. But what I'd like to bring forward from that is, without referring to all of that in detail, which is fortunately, as you mentioned, all pretty much resolved, and people have moved on and done really incredible things, and you know, everybody I know has gone on to do their thing and do it very successfully, and that's brilliant. So there's no need to revisit all that, but what I would say is that we should be, I'm just referring to my notes here. You know, when we're coming to conflict resolution, it helps, I think, to look at the principles. And also then look at the intent, you know. So we look at the principles. What are somebody trying to do? The principles are, you trying to, you know, what are you promoting? Basically, what are you advocating for? Are you advocating for somebody's health benefits? That's great. You know, are you a plant-based doctor with a specialist in nutrition? Fabulous. That's your principles of, you know, and then your intent is, you know, what are you trying to do? What are you intending to do with that? Is to help people perhaps understand that. And then, of course, your attitude is how you go with that. So if your, you know, principles are in place, you know what you're doing, you've got the right intent, which is to help people learn and understand rather than perhaps punish and exclude them. And then you've also got the attitude that helps, which is a consistent, calm attitude generally, that sticks to your principles, but does listen and learn and try and be conducive to a learning outcome. So those are three principles I would ask people to consider in conflict resolution, because that would actually help avoid a lot of conflict by being clear. Those three ideas: get your principles, then your intent, and then attitude. We should avoid conflict. The big key is to avoid weaponizing these principles. Oh, you're not a good enough vegan, or you're not doing it right. You don't, beat people up for no. Okay, look, people don't understand. Help them educate, seek a learning outcome, be supportive, be kind, and don't punish them and weaponize these principles. Well, I'm this and you're that, and I'm better than you. And it's just like, no, that's not really that helpful. Likewise, with issues of race, gender, other areas, ableism. We are in a movement, social justice movement. We do have these issues. We need to bridge them. We need to find solutions. We need to seek learning outcomes. We need to deal with sensitive issues in a supportive fashion. And again, the same thing, avoid weaponizing them. They're sensitive issues. We won't go into, but we know there's a lot of sensitive issues there. We need to keep encouraging people to engage with them and seek learning outcomes, because they're all there and we can get there, but we have to help each other. We cannot punish and exclude. It's not going to get us there. Yes. So that's another key issue. And then I would just point to another few things, and then I'll shut up. We should be looking at, and this has come up recently. So if we're going to solve conflict within our movement, we get a lot of it. And I've had a lot of experience way back to the 80s. I mean, in the 80s and the 90s, that's one of my specialist areas. Of course, in those days, we were in a very different environment. We didn't have rules. We were anarchists, so we made up our own rules. So it was a different, but the same rules applied. The same principles applied. So I'm well versed and I've had a lot of experience in this conflict resolution going back four decades. When it comes to the vegan one, kindness is important, you mentioned. It probably helps to ask the question rather than make the statement. Like you said, so somebody's telling you not to. So if you ask the question, why are you doing it, rather than telling somebody not to do it, that demands a different process. So that can be helpful, to ask questions rather than make statements. Don't assume. Try and be generous, especially don't assume the worst. Okay, somebody may have slipped up. Somebody might not have understood. We do make mistakes. Perhaps encourage people to be accountable and seek a learning outcome. But don't just assume. And don't forget the progress people have made. Yeah, maybe 5 years ago, somebody was blah, 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 blah. But, what have they done since? So are we not going to encourage that? Or we just write them off because of what they said 5, 10 years ago? That's not going to help. And listen and then process. So if your conflict resolution involves somebody telling you a few home truths that you do not like, listen, process, and then respond. Don't just bounce back. But ultimately, you come down to two things. You're either going to solve conflict resolution by compromising. If both of you step down a bit, both groups step down a bit, compromise, be humble, perhaps apologize, and try and, move on, whatever, but compromise. Or, okay, acceptance. We're not going to compromise. We're going to have to accept each other's position or differences or whatever. We're not going to step down. We're not going to compromise. We're not going to find resolution. So we're going to accept it. Okay, we'll accept that. We're not going to punish you for that. We're not going to have a violent conflict. We're going to have non-violent communication to achieve either a compromise or acceptance. That's my nutshell. Conflict resolution within the movement, according to Tim Barford, in less than 10 minutes.
Thank you. From that, what I'm taking is, this is stuff that we kind of used to underpin our group. It's about delivering our vegan abolitionist stance with peace, love, and kindness. So it is about being respectful, being, recognizing that people you're talking to have different life experiences which you don't know about, but also the people within your group as well have different life experiences. and also different affinities and different viewpoints. I mean, I think all the people in our group, I mean, obviously they're all signing up to a specific way of doing things, but their experiences as an individual and also within the animal rights and their vegan journey makes our group richer. Because it's not like clones of me, it's like me learning from them and them learning from me. And I do learn quite a lot from the other people in my group. You know, the younger ones coming through and the older ones who've been there much longer than I have, you know, so it is really, so I think it is quite key that you listen to each other and you are respectful. And I think it's about, you know, like you said, the intent earlier on, it's about kind of like finding out what is your point of view which you're not going to change from, what is your sort of stance, and whether you want to compromise your stance, which we know we can't and we won't as a group, but you have to accept that other people, if that's the case, if that is your stance, if your stance is, say, red and you are talking to somebody who's blue, that it's very, very difficult to get them to meet. So you have to either accept it or get yourself sort of like you're going to get really upset about it. And really, really damage yourself because you kind of like thinking about all the failures rather than thinking about all the successes you've had. So yeah, I mean, I've took a lot away from that as well. So you know, thank you very much. And you know, I'm just so pleased that you managed to you know, obviously. Sorry, when you were going to say something there.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to cut a couple of things to wrap up because they are big things. I think in conflict resolution, it's really important to also to bear in mind that, you know, there are differences. You just said that, and it reminded me about the differences between people's backgrounds and such. You know, we are in a world where we do have imbalance and inequality still, structurally especially, and we have to recognise that and engage with that and be sensitive to that. And you know, the intersection of oppressions is an area that we have to engage with and seek to understand, because there are imbalances, and if we're not recognizing those with conflict resolution, you know, but at the same time, as I've mentioned, we cannot weaponize those positions either. So we've got to try and find. You mentioned there blue and red. I mean, do we go purple, or do we stay blue and red, but kind of keep peace, or are we blue and red and fine? Well, A is possibly not the best option, but can be. You know, the merge. But B. Certainly with veganism and plant-based diets, I'd say that B is the best option. Red and blue, but, you know, we're more than happy. Much like my football teams, you know, everything stand together where it matters. You know, justice for the 97, we are united, and nothing. We'll take that apart. But when it comes to Derby Day, it's like, you know, and that's okay. You know, we respect each other. We're not at conflict. We're united. That is a good indication for me where we can be with our vegan movement. You know, we are red and blue. Okay, but that's okay. We're the same. We're different sides of the same coin. Or, you know, football lives, we're just different sides of Stanley Park. So we are the same.
I think it's also really important that we sort of listen to those who've been in the animal rights movement for a long, long time, because they have, you know, people like Ronnie Lee, Mel Broughton, John Orwin, many more who I've spoken to as well. I mean, I've got a lot of respect for them. I mean, they went through some horrendous times, actually fighting to change things completely the other way. But I do think that the animal rights movement, I'm always a positive person, so I'm always kind of thinking like, look at how far we've come rather than how far we've got to go, you know, so kind of like looking at what the things we've been able to change and affect, you know. So
look how many amazing women speakers we have now. This is what's really changed the last 5 years. Is, you know, I mean, I know you've mentioned all those men, and that's because all of these men go back to the 70s. That was more men kind of, you know, but now we've got so many women. Now it's become a sort of hard work. There's people like the vegan women's leadership who've made a real, you know, job of amplifying women's voices. And now we're in this beautiful world where we don't actually have a few men dominating the movement. We have lots and lots of different men and women, but women speakers and lots of women voices all over the world now. And this is just so refreshing. I mean, we're through it. We can really encourage that and value that in our movement and see the growth. So I would say we're really moving in good directions, but it's up to us to amplify those. And we've got this decade to really get this job done.
Yeah.
You know, a big job ahead of us, and thank you.
Yeah. So you've given us a lot of vegan food for thought there. So thank you very much, and I really appreciate it. I know we could talk about this for hours and hours, but hopefully it's given our listeners and viewers plenty of time to, you know, to kind of unpack what you've said and go away and have a bit think about it. And obviously they can put comments on when I air this and everything, you know, and they can contact me or you to talk about it further. So we're going to sign off there now anyway. So thank you very much, Tim. I really appreciate it. And we've given up your time once again to talk to us. So this is Northeast Animal Rights, and Amelia signing off now, saying thank you very much to Tim, and goodbye for now.